Ever wonder why the masses seem completely brainwashed and lost in delusion and hysteria as they enslave themselves to corrupted, lying authoritarians? I have a theory. The fight-or-flight stress response is essential for surviving life-and-death situations, but it's triggered for far more than that in the modern world. People are constantly exposed to potent, emotionally activating, horrifying imagery and problems that propagandists and politicians exploit, keeping much of the public caught in powerful, distressing anxiety. The 24-hour news cycle and social media algorithms amplify this emotional charge, sowing division and stoking outrage. It's not a revelation that people are reactive and scared, but lesser known is what happens to the brain and critical thinking abilities when people are perpetually steeped in fear. When fight or flight is chronically activated, the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain most associated with reasoning and logic, can become impaired. The dendrites and spines of neurons in this region may grow weaker and connectivity can be reduced as stress wears on the brain. Meanwhile, the amygdala, a key part of the stress response that also plays a massive role in emotions, can become hyperactive and dominant. When people are stuck in fight or flight, their higher thinking abilities are not leading the way. One of the most pervasive stressors is arguably the current political paradigm and all the chaos and instability it produces. From economic stress to fear of authoritarianism and perceived enemies both domestically and abroad, the fight or flight response seems to be activated on a collective, perpetual scale. Add in that stress often leads people to numb out with unhealthy substances that are also shown to weaken cognitive function, and it's pretty unsurprising that people are growing increasingly unhinged over time. I'm not claiming available evidence proves that propaganda and the political system are single-handedly rotting people's minds. I'm viewing what's known about stress in the brain through a lens of collective crowd psychology and the very observable stress and chaos rattling through the political paradigm and society. Making matters worse, lifelong conditioning into obedience and the belief in the legitimacy of political authority keeps people instinctively turning toward the very entity endangering them and propagandizing them, the ruling class, to keep them safe. Politicians perpetuate the problems and conditions that create so much stress and fear, and people desperate for relief hand over their agency and livelihoods as they wait for authoritarians to save them. The good news is that the same neuroplasticity that allows the brain to be warped into dysregulation also allows the brain to come back into balance. With enough information, intention, and dedication, along with grounding, reconnection to Earth, spirit, and each other, and alternative ideas for humans to evolve past this twisted paradigm, change is possible, meaning perhaps there's hope, as far off as it may seem now. This isn't to say that every person who subscribes to mainstream politics has an impaired prefrontal cortex and is constantly trapped in a vortex of terror and fear. But on a collective scale, it's hard to watch the panicking herds as they perpetually fall for false promises from wolves in sheep's clothing and not see that chronic stress, propaganda, and political chaos are at least in part driving the masses to collectively lose their minds.